All right, backyard bushcraft isn't just about making stuff. What if there was a problem and you needed to harvest food? You can do it in your backyard. Okay, so what we have here is a live trap. It's just a small little live trap, and they're really easy to set up. Let's see if I can do this with one hand. They're pretty easy to set up. If you have, let me get one hand going, but you just put this back and there's a pin that holds it up, and if you buy one, they're pretty cheap. They're about 12 or 13 bucks. This is about the size for a squirrel. Also a rat, you know, you could use it for. But let me set this up and then I'll show you what we're going to do with it. Turn this around so I can see that I'm in the shot. So the turnaround rate on trapping is higher than the turnaround rate on hunting. We can put more traps out. We can put it in the environment where those animals are living and constantly traveling. And even if we're not there, we can get food. For hunting, you either have to find out where they're going and be there before they get there, or you have to wait and hope they come through. I'm on what's called a pass-through property. So the bigger animals like deer don't live on my property. They pass through in the morning, in the afternoon. It's at different times every day. You would think, deer being creatures of habit, it would be more often or more consistent, but it's not. Weather plays a big part in it. Not to mention, weather plays a big part in washing away sign, whether it be tracks, whether it be scat, whatever. Sometimes it's difficult to see where they're traveling through, especially time of year like this, where there's no snow, there's no leaves on the trees, there's nothing that helps with sign. So it's pouring down the rain and everything just looks the same basically. Oh, my lip's swollen because I have an infection. I had a root canal done because I had an infection, and now the infection's back. So if I look like a duck, it's because my lip's swollen and it doesn't move very well. So trapping to me is probably one of the most critical things you need to learn how to do. Start with little wins. I say this all the time. Don't start with conibears and body grip traps and raccoon foothold traps and things like that. The reason I say don't start with those things, for one, they can tend to cost a bit more. There's a learning curve to them. You have to prep those traps before you use them so they don't rust away on you. And a lot of people see traps that are rusty and think they should throw them away. There's such a learning curve. For one, we don't throw them away. Number two, we don't oil them. We clean them and dye them. I use oak leaves and I boil them in oak leaves and it dyes them black. And for the foothold traps, I coat them in trapping wax, and that keeps them moving pretty fluidly. Body grip traps, we don't wax those. We just dye them, and that's it. And that kind of gives them a patina so they don't rust as quickly. For things like the live trap I just showed you, notice I had the back of it backed up against a brush pile, put some stuff over top. I put the bait behind the pan inside the trap, and I sprinkled a little bit in the front to lead them in. Why would I use a live trap when I could easily right there use like a body grip trap? Well, it's, for one, I'm in my backyard. There are chickens moving around over here. There's cats. Where they all keep coming from, I don't know, but there's cats that hang out by our pool and everything. I don't want them stepping in a kill trap. I don't want them stepping in a foothold trap. Would the foothold trap kill them? No. Actually, my traps are set up for bigger animals that it wouldn't typically grab a cat's leg, and if it did, it wouldn't break it. It just hurt it, that's all. But I don't want to. I don't want to trap the wrong animals. I don't want to trap and kill chickens or cats. I'm looking for squirrel to go into those traps. That's all I'm looking for. So I'm going to use a trap that if by some odd chance I ended up with, say, a kitten in that trap, which I shouldn't because there's none around right now, but if I did, it's still alive. I've actually used bigger versions of those traps to catch feral cats. I catch them, I take them to a place at a local fire department that does free spay and neutering. And then I re-release them out here, actually. People are like, why don't you take them to a shelter? I have a lady that comes out and she picks up cats every year and she gets them out for adoption. She gets them their shots and all those things. They're not my cats, but I don't want more of them, so I take them, get them spayed and neutered. It costs me like 20 bucks. And one place does it for free if you can catch it at the right time. But I use live traps to actually trap cats and take them, have them done up, and I put them back out here so they can't reproduce, okay? But for this kind of thing, what I'm looking at is, can I catch game from the comfort of my backyard? Most importantly, can I practice that? Now, once again, check the laws in your area. You may not be allowed to set live traps in your backyard, but you can at least practice it, okay? But I know there's a lot of you sitting there right now watching like, yeah, there's them squirrels that keep eating out my bird feeders, and I see them up and down the trees, and they're screaming at me all the time and everything. Yeah. Or I have that garden on my homestead, or my 1 acre lot that I grow my garden on, and I got groundhogs coming in there, and I got rabbits coming in there. Well, folks, that's food. Those are food. Learn how to trap. Learn the laws in your area of when you can trap, what kind of traps you're allowed to use, and practice it in your backyard, okay? Learn how these traps work, and also learn, can I do this with gloves on? Or do I have to use my bare hands? Like those live traps there, I could use gloves, but it's hard to get the little pin to hook on the door to hold it in place. So what I tend to do is take my gloves off. Well, it's raining and it's freezing cold out, so my hands are going to start shaking. So I need to think about all these things. How does this environment affect me? Am I capable of doing these tasks? Am I going to be surprised by anything? Do I need to bring a toolkit to repair these things if they break? But the other thing is live trapping. I'm going to take a class up Dave Canterbury School on primitive trapping because I just love the traditional primitive stuff. But I can't use primitive trapping out here. Why? It's illegal. I'm not allowed to use primitive traps out here. I would love to. It'd be so much simpler. Well, not simpler, but it'd be very fun and convenient for me. But it's against the law, so I can't do that. All right. Live traps, what I look at is, well, let's say out and about doing stuff, maybe plowing snow and trying to get some hunting done and chopping firewood and all these things, and maybe a day goes by, 2 days goes by, and I'm like, oh shit, forgot about that trap. Doesn't matter, it's a live trap, which means the food inside will not spoil. Why? Because it's still alive. Those are the kind of things I look for. Now, are those kind of traps convenient to carry out and about in the woods and everything? No, they're bulky. But that's where we come into things like conveyance. And that's why practicing in the backyard lets us know, well, if we're going to do all this stuff, do I need something to pull this stuff in with? Do I need something to take this out to my location with? I drive the Land Rover, but a lot of times I keep a sled in the back. For a long time, it was just a regular kiddie sled. Now it's like a hunting sled that you put deer on and stuff. I like it. I can throw all my gear in it. And I got a rope that goes around my waist, and I just walk through the woods, and I got my sled. So I can put my traps in there. I can put heavier tools in there. I can travel tool heavy because I have conveyance, right? So first lesson is, can you do food procurement in your backyard? So we're into the bushcraft survival prepper area of things. If you're into homesteading, trapping is going to be one of those things you need to know forward and back. Your basic conibear traps, your basic body grips. Duke 110s, they tend to handle a lot of different things. The 110 you can use for possum, raccoon, groundhog, you know, those things that rip your freaking gardens apart, right? Well, if you don't have them and you don't know how to use them, you're not going to be able to take care of that. If your livelihood is going to be dependent upon your garden, well, you better know how to trap. Because you might think, well, I'll just sit out there with my rifle. Good luck to you. All right. Yeah, I popped off a few with my rifle here and there, but I'll tell you, I would much rather set a trap. Why? Because when those little critters come out in the middle of the night, when I'm sleeping sound asleep in my bed, I don't have to be out there. I can get them while I'm not there. Next morning, check my traps. As long as I can look at my traps within 24 hours of trapping something, even if it's a kill trap, the meat will be fine. So that comes into the second element. Do you want to wait until you're out in the woods to learn how to process game? No, you want to do that at home, okay? So being able to procure food, trap food, whether it's live or in a kill trap, is going to determine how well you can provide for your own family. And that, like I said, that means protecting your stock. You might have that garden going and all these different things. Well, I have to ask, can you trap to save that garden and to procure meat? So I carry this bucket around here. I'll show it to you. Hold on a second. Bucket, and inside this bucket is a multitude of different things. I have these staples so I can mount traps or chains from traps to trees. I have some cat food because the raccoons really seem to like that. I got some peanut butter in there. Everybody likes that. Then I have these fence pliers. I got a cutter. I got a hook on them for do a little digging or whatever. Got a hammer on them for pounding the staples in. Don't hit your fingers with these, they hurt. These are pretty cheap. They're about 10 bucks. I keep those in my trapping kit along with some staples and nails. I have some bank line and some regular jute twine in there. I have conibear traps, foothold traps. Notice there's a little rust on them. It doesn't matter, all right? Next season, I'll be cleaning these up and boiling them. These were used already this year. This is a regular, bigger Duke trap here. This is probably good for something like a big raccoon. Fox, things like that. I can use this for mink. Mainly I use these ones for raccoon. I like kill traps with raccoons. I don't really do the foothold traps all that much. I have smaller versions of these, which are 110s, and that's what I use for things like rabbit. Some raccoons get into them too, smaller raccoons. And notice I have it in a bucket with a hunting seat on top, a swivel seat, because I can be carrying this bucket with me when I go hunting. And that's what I sit on. I just leave it out here, right underneath my cart here. And I could sit on that while I'm hunting, but I also have my traps with me. So if hunting's not going so good, lunchtime, I'll say, well, I'm going to go set some traps, right? But also I have that and more in the barn here because my garden gets placed right over here. So I have everything really close. If I have a pest nuisance, some little varmints, well, I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna sit out here all day. I fence my garden off. It's got chicken wire around it and everything. When I get it all set up, I take the fence down each year. And then, so if cats are around, they're not getting in there because I will set traps. All right. So I set the traps, and if in the summer months, I could trap things like you know, groundhogs and things like that. Most places you're not really allowed to trap rabbit and stuff like that in the summertime, so you know, be careful. But you're doing all this work, and gardening's expensive. I don't care what anybody tells you. When you're first starting it up, first few years of getting it going, it's expensive. So you know, buying seeds or even buying starter plants if you didn't start your own plants or don't have the facility to do that. I don't want to see a bunch of animals eating my stuff, but I am of the mind that if I trap something, I'm going to use as much of the kill that I can, like the skin, some of the meat. With scavengers, you don't want to eat too much of that meat. Maybe the hindquarters. That's about it. I try not to touch anything that's around the chest cavity because scavengers do carry heartworm. But things like squirrel and thing are easy to trap, and it's a good thing to start on, and they taste really good actually. Once you trap a squirrel, I'm not going to show skinning and gutting and stuff on these videos. Once you trap a squirrel, you skin it, then you got it, clean the meat, and then let it sit in a pot of salty water for about 4 or 5 hours. It's called a brine, and that'll tenderize the meat a good bit and kill any nasties on it, which there shouldn't be. But the live traps allows us to set it and walk away. Then each day, not all day long, don't be going out there all day and saying, I wonder if it got anything in my trap. Stay away from it, leave it sit, come back in the next morning and see if you got anything in there. Now a lot of people are going to be like, well, what if there's something in there? What do I do then? That's when I use a 22 pistol. A 22 pistol, the most not talked about firearm. It's probably one of the most versatile firearms you could have. I don't carry it for a protection piece, but I carry a 22 Rough Rider revolver. You can get them for about $100 at a pawn shop, 145 brand new at like a sporting goods store. They take 22 Colt and they take 22 long rifle. So they have a interchangeable cylinder in them. The reason I carry the 22 long rifle one for trapping, right? But here's what's cool about it. If I'm out squirrel hunting with a rifle, I use a 22. Sometimes I use 410. But I carry a 12 gauge shotgun, a single shot shotgun with adapters, and I have an 8-inch 22 long rifle adapter for that shotgun. So sometimes I use it if I'm hunting rabbit and things like that. If that's the case, I have ammunition for that, my hunting tool. It's the same ammunition for my revolver. Okay, so I don't carry my revolver around, say that's my everyday carry for personal protection or anything. Can be, bullets hurt, but it's for the purpose of things like this, for trapping. Or if I shoot a rabbit and you know, I didn't quite get it, you know, it's hurt, and I get a little bit closer and I find out it's still alive, I just pull my revolver and shoot it, right? Also in the garden, if I trap and they're sometimes in those, especially in foothold traps, they're not dead, I have my revolver. And body grip traps. Sometimes you'll go to find a body grip trap with a raccoon in it and it's not dead. Most of the time, if you catch it early, it's not dead. So you keep your revolver with you. So the 22 long rifle shells are dirt cheap. What, about $3 a box for like 50 to 100 of them. They used to be hard to get. Every time I go grocery shopping, I stop at either Walmart or a sporting goods store and buy a couple boxes of 22 long rifle shells. Every single time. If I'm going to the grocery store, I'm going to be stopping to get 22 long rifle shells. Every time. I probably have thousands of them at this point. Why? Well, because back in 2007, 2008, the government bought up billions of 22 long rifle shells, and they were hard to find. So every time Walmart put them on the shelves, they were gone in an hour. I don't know about you, but I'll never go through that again. All right. It's not worth it to reload those shells, but you can save the brass and recycle the brass. But it's not worth it to reload the shells. It's cheap enough just to go buy them by the box. So I say every time you go grocery shopping, $3 or $4 a box, go buy 2 boxes. Every single time. You know, don't get the donuts this week, right? This teaches you to be mindful of what you're going to be doing around your property. It's going to teach you to be mindful about preparing without going broke, but not having to be in prepper mentality all the time. It's more a possum mentality. It's thinking about the next thing that's going to happen. But in a live trap, well, I know that before tomorrow when I go to check this trap, I'm going to be carrying my revolver with me, right? I'm not going to bring it back over to my porch and dispatch it here. I'm going to do it over there. But the live trap also allows me to take it back to where I usually process meats, and I can just carry it back there. So it's not around, you know, the house and everything. But such a simple thing in the backyard. I didn't have to make anything, right? It's just a little trap. You can get that at those traps, the live traps like that, you can get at any hardware store basically. Any local hardware store, sporting goods store, you'll find these live traps. All right, Tractor Supply. I think they're like $13 at Tractor Supply. That's another thing. Every month, go buy yourself a live trap. Buy a couple different sizes. Start with the smaller ones. Let's see if I can show you one of the boxes here. I got these ones at Field and Stream. They were like $12, $13. They're just squirrel wrap and chipmunk traps. Number 1 door cage, 16 inches long, 5 inches high, and 5 inches wide. Simple little traps, easy to set up. They don't come with instructions, so if you don't know how to set them up, it's real simple. And let me switch angles here. So what you have is a door, and it just lifts up. There's this outer part that will expand when this door shuts. Okay. Right here on the side, you'll see this little ring that goes down to a pan. Okay. When you pull that up, you'll notice the pan will lift up. That's setting the trap. And then right here, let me get my finger out of the way. Right down in here is a little hook, and it hooks onto the door. It's real touchy. So it hooks right onto the door. What I tend to do is sand a little bit of that paint off so it grabs a little bit better. But I want it to be pretty like a hair trigger, okay? So when the animal, I put the bait back here. So I'll sprinkle it around after I get my trap set. I'll sprinkle it back here, and I'll put some back here. Squirrels they're very jittery. They'll walk around this trap for like 10 minutes before they go inside. I put the majority of it in here. I put a little bit around to tease them so they know that bait's back there. I'll put it in here. They'll climb on top of the cage and everything else. But when they go inside the cage and the bait's all the way back here, they're just going to step on this right here, and it closes the trap. And that's why I sand a little bit of that paint off. It makes it so this little hook here, let me see, that little hook right there, when I touch that, the little trap lifts up. I sand the paint off of it and off of the part of the door that it hooks on. So we go like this, we fold it, we bring that up, and then we just push that little hook. It's hard to do with one hand. We push that little hook right there. And since I sand a little paint off, it's real touchy. So as soon as the squirrel steps on that, it sets it off. Usually with their back legs. And that's why I put the bait way back here, because it's usually their hind quarters that are going to set it off. And then they're in there, and I just pick it up. So when they're just sitting around like this, I don't leave them open like that. I just close them like that. And these are easy to store away. They're stackable. I can store them away pretty easily. And they're, like I said, they're cheap. Thing is, I didn't show in the last part was that trap is tacked down. So I put a stick in the ground, and I have a little like dog chain, and I like a little leash, and I hook it to that, and I wrap it around the stick, and I drive it into the ground. Live traps aren't generally going to walk away on you, but if there's a coyote in the area or something like that, and he really wants that squirrel, he'll carry that cage away. It's no joke. I've seen them do it. They'll carry that cage away. So always secure your cages so you don't come out one day and find out something walked away with it. All right. So like I said, this is another thing. Every month I buy 2 more cages. So like 26, 30 bucks, or buy one if you want to. So I'll buy a bunch of those. I have about 12 or 13 of the small ones. And I got about, I think, 15 of the bigger ones for catching coon and things like that. Then I have about 6 canine size cages for like coyote and those kind of things. A lot of people don't like live traps. They're like, well, then I got to go out and shoot this animal. Okay, we're going to have a little conversation about this. You're probably going to have to shoot the animal anyway. Many traps you'll find do not have a dead animal in them. We'd like to think they would. Probably a good 60% of the time the animal's still alive when you get there, so you got to dispatch the animal. Number 2, even if you're not there, okay, you're killing the animal. Okay, this is something that if you're going to do hunting and things like that, or preparedness, you have to be. I don't like it. I don't enjoy taking the life of an animal. It's not sport to me. I collect meat, I harvest meat, I can it, I freeze it, I use it for my family and for a lot of other people that need food. If I don't need meat, I don't hunt. That's the way I am. If I don't need meat, I don't trap. If I don't need the furs or the skins, I don't trap. But pretending that I didn't kill the animal because I wasn't there when it got in the trap, that's just ridiculous. You got to get familiar with your tools. You know, I know a lot of folks that have firearms and they go to a shooting range like maybe once a year. And I'm like, that's not knowing how to responsibly use that weapon, that device. I know we're talking about the backyard bushcraft here, but you know, we talk about, you know, other skills. I think a lot of people got into woodcraft, bushcraft, outdoors survival stuff. So they're thinking someday they might have to leave their home and go at it in the woods. I'd tell you, don't do that. Try to stay away from the woods as much as possible in those situations. And there's a reason for it. there's more that can go wrong out there than there is that can go wrong out here. So if you don't have these skills down here, something as simple as a live trap, I want you to think, do you have a stack of those sitting in your basement? Do you have 2 in your trunk of your car? In your tool shed? If you're saying no to me, that means that the backyard is where you need to start practicing this stuff, all right? Even if you're not looking to catch the squirrel that you love seeing at your kitchen window in your backyard, you can set it up, because guess what? You can open that door and release them. Yeah, that's the luxury of practicing with live traps. I can open the door, the squirrel did not get hurt, and I can let it go. All right? So when you practice these skills, you don't have to, if you don't need the meat procurement, you don't have to kill the little critter. There's a little handle on the door. You just hold the door, hold the trap away from you, lift up the little handle on the door, and let him scurry out. He'll run right out. He won't come back at you. He'll run right out, be on his way. Now, good chance you're not going to catch that squirrel ever again, because he knows, they're smart. He knows what that trap is, but they get curious. But what I'm getting at here is, that's why these are the perfect traps to practice with, because you can let the animal go. All right? But at least you'll know what your success rate at trapping is. If you're using the right baits, you'll know if you're able to procure meat when you need to. Some people are like, well, I got 2 traps, I'll be fine. You might want to multiply that about 5 or 10. Okay? Not all traps will yield results. Some traps get stuck. Sometimes the animals don't go anywhere near them. Sometimes the bait you put in them. Sometimes the trigger is a little less sensitive than other ones. Sometimes a branch will fall on it and set the trap off before you catch anything. It happens. These are just all the things that happen. So try it out on the edge of the woods, in your backyard. Make sure you have a trapping license if you need one in your area. Some areas don't need license to trap squirrels and stuff like that, but most do. Your yearly hunting license doesn't cost that much, so I would say get a hunting license and fur bearers and trapping license. You're pretty good in that. I also like to get the extended turkey and archery hunting licenses too. But trapping is something that's easy to practice. You can do it right in your backyard. You see how the traps work. You see what can go wrong with them, which is interesting. And then you start learning, what tools do I need to have with me? Trapping is a tool-heavy endeavor. So if you're going out there in the woods to do some trapping, you want to make sure you have all the tools that you need. Conveyance, like I said, like a sled, a quad, something like that. And you want to make sure that you have all the tools you could possibly need to repair things. Trust me, you're going to be hard-pressed to find people that repair traps for a living. So having the skill to actually repair them is a good idea too. And if you think you have enough traps, you probably need to multiply that by 2 or 10, 5 or 10. You're never done buying traps. So they're cheap enough. The Duke body grip traps, the smaller ones that are good for things like rabbit and things like that, they're about $4 or $5. You know, the one size up from that I showed you for, like I use raccoons, got 2 springs on it. There's a special tool you can buy to squeeze that down if you don't have real strong hands. I just use my fingers. Those are about $7 or $8 a piece. The foothold traps, conibear traps, those are roughly, they range from $5 all the way up to like $27, depends on how big they are. You don't need real big ones for general trapping. Learn how to process the game for meat. Learn how to process the fur for wearable items or for you know, pouches or whatever. All right, don't waste it. It's a usable resource, and it's really easy to process fur. You may not make it look real pretty, but the skins, you can use those for a lot of different things. So step 1 is practice with something that is already created. Live traps are already built. They're cheap. You can find them almost any hardware store, and you can set them out in your backyard and try them out. You can get familiar with them, practice with them. Luckily, you can, like I said, you can let them go. There's nothing wrong with catching an animal in a live trap. You're not going to get penalized for doing that to get a nuisance out of your backyard. I would be cautious though if you decide to relocate that animal. Some areas do not allow you to relocate pests and rodents and things. Okay, but if you're just testing it out, just open the door and let it go. That trap is not going to kill an animal. Now, could it? Maybe. Anything's a possibility. Generally, no. It's just going to be alive in there, nervous. That's all. And well fed if you put enough bait in there. So it'll be fine for a day. You're not hurting anything. But remember, live meat don't spoil. Number 2, remember, practice these things in your backyard, because you're going to find that you don't want to be out in the woods hoping and praying that things work, and then you find there's a problem that you didn't know how to deal with. Number 3, if you're doing all this stuff that we teach for survival reasons, then you got to have a little come to Jesus with yourself and say, well, I might have to kill an animal. It's just the way it is, and I might be looking at eye to eye. Just appreciate it for what it is. All right? Next one, I think we're going to start making some woodcraft stuff. Okay? So start working with some tools, some simple tools. I'm going to show you how to make a tool, which is really fun. And we're going to start building things. And maybe some of these videos, pretty soon, you're going to see my kids in them too, because I like doing this stuff with them. I don't like leaving them out of the whole thing, and it's more fun. It seems like there's more of a purpose to it when I'm teaching my kids while I'm recording a video for you. All right, take care.